There's an American city in the middle of the Amazon, and it's being torn to the ground. Managers are running for their lives, and angry workers are chasing after them, yelling, "Brazil for Brazilians!" This is Fordlandia. It was the dream of Henry Ford, and it was supposed to be this grand utopia, but instead it became a graveyard. So why did Ford, of all people, want to build a city in the middle of the jungle, and how did it descend into chaos? Well, my name's Jimmy, and today in the Lore Garage, it's the story of Ford versus Mother Nature. Back in the 1920s, Henry Ford was on top of the capitalist food chain. He wasn't just building cars, he was reshaping the modern world. He perfected the assembly line, created the first affordable car, and he basically invented the modern day middle class. But old Hank had a big problem. He was a control freak.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
He didn't want to just buy parts from suppliers. He wanted to own the entire supply chain. The guy was a madman. The iron for the frames, the wood for the wheel spokes, all of it. But there was one material he just couldn't manage to get his greedy little gams on: rubber. At the time, the British and the Dutch had a lock on the world's rubber supply, and this drove Ford insane. He hated those queen-loving Europeans in top hats telling him what his tires should cost, so he decided that if he couldn't just buy the rubber on his terms, he'd just grow the tires himself. But there weren't any rubber trees in Dearborn, Michigan, or anywhere in the United States for that matter. So he started looking abroad, and eventually he secured a land grant the size of Connecticut in the Amazon Rainforest Cafe and unveiled his plans to build a Midwestern utopia there to grow rubber trees. Tracy Tree would lose her mind. I love Rainforest Cafe, by the way. If you ever meet me in Vegas, that's where we're going. Here is where Ford's narcissism really kicked into overdrive. He never actually visited the site, not once. Instead, he thought he could manage the entire project via telegraph from his air-conditioned office in Michigan. For Henry, the rainforest was just an extension of his factory floor. Now, to run his jungle kingdom, he didn't hire farmers or biologists. He hired a gaggle of yes-men like John Roga and resident alcohol enthusiast Willis Blakely, who wouldn't question his genius or his agenda at all.
Would you kindly cut down that tree?
Blakely and co. started by setting fire to a massive chunk of the rainforest to clear the land, because who cares about the ecosystem when you're trying to make some tires? Ford's managers then ignored every bit of local advice they had gotten and planted their rubber trees in dense, crowded rows. In Ford's genius mind, fires were faster and cheaper than clearing the land the right way, and the close tree planting was space efficient. But in reality, they were setting the stage for a biological massacre, which is the name of my crustcore band that will be premiering in October of 2026 because my buddy Bill is still on house arrest.
Man, this is a lot of work. Wish I had an extra set of hands.
Dude, I got you.
NOS Energy Grand Prix Guava.
Yeah, it tastes great. And it'll give you that energy boost you need.
NOS Energy Grand Prix Guava packs a punch of guava and peach into one bold tropical flavor that fuels adrenaline junkies from the track to the street. It's great for long hauls or long days in the garage, helping you lock in and focus. If you have a project car, you know the work is never ending, so grab yourself a can of NOS Energy Grand Prix Guava and get your project over the finish line. You might even feel like you have an extra set of hands. Click the link in the description to learn more. Whoa, getting crazy. Whoa.
Now, Ford didn't want to just dominate the land. He wanted to dominate the people working there too, because he's an absolute freak. Fordlandia wasn't just a jungle factory, it was a town. There were bungalows with lawns and white picket fences, paved roads, and even hotels. On the surface, it pretty much looked like a normal American town. But this wasn't America, and Fordlandia was becoming somewhat of a dystopian nightmare. The local population that was hired to staff Fordlandia was forced to play along with this American city cosplay fantasy. Ford set the clocks to Detroit time and made them work on a Detroit 9-to-5 schedule. This meant working in the hottest part of the day instead of the more traditional early morning and late evening hours. This would ruin my schedule so much. I hate this. The housing was heavily insulated with asbestos. Not only was it hazardous to your health, but it was hot. They might have been cozy in a Michigan winter, but in the Amazonian sun, they were pretty much easy bake ovens. He also forbid the staff from serving local foods and instead had things like soggy oatmeal and canned peaches to Americanize their diets. He made them attend poetry readings and had mandatory square dancing. That's the worst kind of dancing. I'm sorry, I'm not a big country guy. And finally, to top it all off, he enforced American laws, including the silliest one, prohibition, which meant alcohol was banned from the property. In theory. You see, while Ford preached sobriety and Puritan values from his Detroit headquarters, Blakely was busy stumbling through the jungle on very public benders. Gotta run through the jungle. It was psychological warfare, all managed by a man sitting by a telegraph who thought the Ford way was the only way to succeed. Guys, he was literally Andrew Ryan from BioShock. BioShock was probably one of the best video game worlds ever conceived during the Xbox 360's run. I mean, I like BioShock's artwork and story. I feel like BioShock is just one big sewer level. I actually hate sewer levels. Sewer levels suck. Leave a comment down below if you think BioShock is a sewer level. It all exploded on December 20th, 1930, just 5 days and 16 years before my good uncle Jimmy Buffett was born. After years of heat, the housing, the diet, and the square dancing, don't get me started on the square dancing, Roga decided to cut costs by switching from table service meals to a buffet style. That's like going from a Margaritaville to a Golden Corral. The workers lost it. They destroyed the Golden Corral, got pot roast everywhere. They cut all the communication lines, smashed the time clocks, drove trucks into the river, and started tearing the city down brick by brick. Blakely, Roga, and the other managers ran for their lives and swam out to cargo ships anchored in the river and watched their model city crumble to the ground. It was so bad that the Brazilian military had to come in to restore order. With the smoke of the riot clearing, the Yes Men radioed back to Ford from the ship. I'm not joking. Hey, boss, several people are dead, but we got it all under control.
Sounds like you're wasting company time. Would you kindly rebuild my city?
And so Blakely and Roga went limping back to their broken desks. Fordlandia and what few Americans were left were ordered to carry on. The Brazilian workers had given up on their revolution and the coast seemed to be clear, but Fordlandia's ultimate fate wouldn't be decided by rightfully angry workers or even management, but the jungle itself. Because the rubber trees were planted so closely together, they had created the perfect breeding ground for the South American leaf blight. In the wild, these trees grow hundreds of yards apart to stay safe, but in Ford's efficient roads, this fungus spread like a plague. The leaves of the rubber plants turned black and shriveled. The forest itself began to rot. Then native pests swooped in and stripped the dying trees of their last bit of life. And to make things worse, they couldn't replant a single tree. Remember how they burned the forest down? Well, now there were no trees left to stop the rain from just washing away all that good topsoil. But who cares about dirt? Henry Ford was too much of a narcissist to admit he was wrong and decided to move his operation 80 miles downriver to a place called Belterra. Surprise, surprise, it was another colossal failure. While Ford did get some usable rubber out of it, it ended up not mattering all that much anyways, because a few years later, after World War II popped off, synthetic rubber became a thing that was grown in a lab, making all of this struggle completely pointless. When Hank the Deuce took the keys to the company in 1945 and looked at the books, he discovered that the Ford family had poured almost $20 million into the jungle. That's close to $350 million today. Hank the Deuce sold the entire thing back to the Brazilian government for just over $244,000. He didn't want anything to do with this. To put that into perspective, that was the exact amount the company owed the remaining workers in severance pay. It was a complete and total loss. And not just for Ford, but for the people of Brazil. A lot of people died working at Fordlandia, and it's widely believed many deaths went unreported, so no one really knows the total number. Today, if you take a boat down the Amazon River toward Fordlandia, you'll see a rusty water tower peeking over a somewhat recovered jungle canopy, standing as a monument to a man who thought his assembly line was more powerful than Mother Nature itself. There's always a water tower, there's always a man, there's always a city. Now, would you kindly like and subscribe? Thank you guys so much for leaving comments down below. I read them every single time we post a video. I probably shouldn't, but I do it anyway because I really love this series and I really love you guys. Y'all mean the world to me. So thank you guys so much. Okay, bye now.